Hey everybody, my name is Erik with Erik Bets Fights. Today we're going to break down the upcoming fight between Jamahal Hill and Jimmy Crute. This is going to be taking place this Saturday on the UFC on ESPN card, headlined by Jose Aldo and Rob Font. The reason I chose this fight to break down, I think it's one of the more interesting matchups on the card. They're obviously both, pretty big prospects in the light heavyweight division. They have very different styles, so it gives us some kind of interesting things to talk about. And they're both, fighters with a lot of promise in the division, I think. And whomever wins this fight is likely going to end up taking some fights up toward the top of the division, going to have a number next to their name, going to be probably doing some big things. And of course, whoever loses this fight takes a pretty big step down. So anyway, let's go ahead and jump right into breaking down Jamahal Hill versus Jim Crute. First of all, we'll take a look at the tail of the tape. Both pretty big guys here, but Jamahal Hill's going to have a size advantage in pretty much every way. As we see here, Jamahal Hill is 30 years old, Jim Crute is 25. Both fairly young. Crute, I think, made his UFC debut at 22, so, started very young, especially for, a bigger fighter. A lot of times we don't see light heavyweights and heavyweights really don't make it to the UFC until they're well into their 30s a lot of the time. So it is pretty cool to see a fighter like Crute make his UFC debut at 22. Definitely doing quite a bit of learning on the job, but we've seen a lot of improvements from him, and I think he's a fighter with a lot of promise at 25 years of age. Jamahal Hill, 30, but that's still pretty young for the big boys here. We see Jamahal Hill is 6'4", Jim Crute is 6'2", both pretty big guys. Both going to be weighing right around 205. The reach is definitely something that we want to take a look at here. Jamahal Hill has a 79-inch reach. We can really expect him to have a reach advantage over pretty much anyone he fights, unless, of course, John Jones were to come back in. He's got that freakish 84-inch reach. But Jamahal Hill is gonna have an advantage over just about everyone in that department. Jim Crute's got his 74-inch reach, and then looking at their records, 8-1 with one no contest for Jamahal Hill. That one no contest was it was a win. Let's be honest. He beat the shit out of Klidson Abreu, and then he got caught smoking a little weed, so that's why that one became a no contest. And then we see Jim Crute coming in at 12-2. Next thing we want to talk about here is a little section that I call "What Have You Done For Me Lately," where we take a look at each fighter's last 3 fights. We see here for Jamahal Hill, obviously his last fight. Both these guys are kind of in an interesting situation here. They're both coming off losses in the first round due to kind of freak injuries. Well, maybe not freak injuries. Injuries that were definitely caused by their opponent's actions, but kind of injuries that we don't see very often anyway. So looking at Jamahal Hill, his last fight in the UFC was a loss to Paul Craig. If you remember that fight, didn't last very long. Paul Craig pulled guard. He was looking for a triangle. He was looking for an armbar. He was kind of looking for a shoulder lock and that sort of thing. And anyway, he eventually did kind of get Hill in a triangle armbar kind of situation. And he was, I don't know if he actually broke his arm or just dislocated it. I'm not sure what the situation was exactly. But he was punching and elbowing Hill inside of his triangle, and Hill's arm was flopping all over the place. And the ref was very slow to step in and stop that one. So that was kind of a gruesome situation. Hill's fight right before that was Ovince St. Preux. Really nice fight there. He showed a lot of maturity. Obviously OSP is a guy who's been in the game for a long time. He's got some veteran savvy and got some tricks up his sleeve, and Jamahal Hill was able to get a TKO stoppage. It was kind of a standing TKO situation, if I remember correctly. And then we see that Klidson Abreu fight, which was technically a no contest, but Jamahal Hill beat the shit out of Klidson Abreu, if you remember that fight. And then he was later popped for smoking a little bit of the wacky tobacco there. And then Jim Crute, looking at his last 3 fights, his most recent fight was a loss to Anthony Smith. That was where Crute was landing some really nice leg kicks in the first round, and then Anthony Smith caught Crute with a leg kick that just buckled him, and then he kind of had that drop foot thing going on. He couldn't pick his foot up. He couldn't put any weight on it. Kind of a weird injury there. And then his 2 fights immediately before that were wins over Modestas Bukauskas, whom he knocked out with a big right in the first round, I believe it was, and then a submission of Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. It was a Kimura, I believe. Okay, and then moving from there into, let's talk a little bit about each of these guys and what they bring to the table striking-wise. These guys are both good strikers. They're both dangerous strikers, but in very different ways. As we discussed, Jamahal Hill, he's a tall, long guy. He kind of brings to mind fighters like Anderson Silva and John Jones and even Israel Adesanya. He's not necessarily at the level of any of those guys, at least not yet. He's not maybe as technical a striker as some of the names I just mentioned, but he has a similar style and he has a similar kind of physique. He's long, he's thin, he's rangy, and he kind of uses that style where he's not really sitting down on things. He's not really looking to take you out with one strike. He's kind of loose, he's elusive, he's kind of just throwing things out there looking to touch you, not necessarily looking to sit down and take your head off. Although he certainly can. I mean, once he realizes he's got somebody hurt, he definitely knows how to go in for the kill and make that sort of thing happen. One thing I have seen with Jamahal Hill, one thing I've noticed is he doesn't pull his strikes back to his face. You know that whole thing where you're supposed to kind of pretend that your hands are attached with rubber bands, and when you shoot that strike out there, you bring it right back to where it was, so you're always covering. You're covering, and Jamahal Hill has a tendency to kind of shoot that jab out and just drop it. He's not always he's not always covering himself up. So I mean, we may see a day when that comes back to bite him. That's something he may want to shore up as he moves up higher in the ranks and fights better and better fighters, some of that defense there. He does also fight with his chin up high. That's something that I think some of the commentators have even mentioned, and another thing that he might want to be looking to shore up a little bit more. He tends to keep some pretty decent volume on, so he can be a minute winner. He's not a big knockout puncher. He can get finishes once he hurts somebody, like he did against OSP. But he's a fighter who's looking to keep the volume on you and win minutes. So even if he doesn't find that knockout punch, he can definitely do that. But he does again against OSP. He did show that he has those killer instincts when he needs them. Once he realizes he's got his opponent hurt, he can move in for the kill. Talking about Jim Crute's striking, he's a very different kind of striker. He sits down on his strikes a lot more. He doesn't have that kind of long rangy thing going on. Jim Crute is more so than really looking to be elusive and looking to throw a lot of combinations and touch you up. He's a guy who's more so trying to take your head off with a single strike if he can. He lands really hard leg kicks, really nice leg kicks, and which he will sometimes follow up with punches. One thing that I did notice in his last fight with Anthony Smith, he struggled a lot with Smith's jab, which is something that worries me a little bit here. Obviously, Smith is another, kind of longer, rangier fighter, and he was really popping Crute with that jab and hurting him with a jab. I mean, really kind of, I think Cormier said, oh, that one set him down in his stool a little bit. He landed a jab that actually kind of stumbled Crute back, and he was marking his face up pretty good in that first round. Jamahal Hill definitely has that long rangy jab that he could use to be touching up Crute as well. So that's something that Crute's gonna want to watch for. Like I said, he does have that one-shot power, like he showed against Modestas Bukauskas. But it's likely that Crute is probably not gonna want to strike here. I'm not going to say that he won't strike, which is something we'll talk a little bit more about lately. But if the fight does play out on the feet, Crute does have that power. Crute does have those leg kicks. I'm not saying he's a fish out of water or anything, but if it does play out on the feet, you have to kind of lean toward Jamahal Hill with that high level striking that he's got. The next thing we're going to want to talk about is let's talk about their grappling a little bit. Obviously on paper and as far as how it's played out in the ring, Crute is the more decorated grappler, the more accomplished grappler. I believe he is a BJJ black belt. I think Jamahal Hill might be only a BJJ blue belt. The fact of the matter is we really haven't seen a lot of grappling from Jamahal Hill. And that's partially because we haven't had to. I mean, he's not the kind of guy, he's more of a striker at heart. He's not the kind of guy who's going to be looking for takedowns, looking to make a fight play out on the ground. But when we've seen fighters try to take Jamahal Hill down, they've been able to take him down, but they haven't really been able to keep him down. One thing that one of the commentators, I think Dominic Cruz mentioned in the Darko Stosic fight, or Was it not Darko Stosic? Maybe it was. I can't remember for sure. Anyway, one of Hill's fights, Hill got taken down 6 times, I believe. And Dom did mention, hey, one thing Jamahal Hill's going to want to work on is he's going to work on that takedown defense. He can be taken down, but he tends to get up pretty quickly. He doesn't necessarily settle in. He's not one of those fighters who's because he knows the ground isn't where he butters his bread. He's not one of those fighters who's going to settle in on his back and try to play the guard game or anything like that. In one of his fights, I do remember he got taken down. I forget which fight it was, but he got taken down and he was on his back, and I was thinking, please work to get up, work to get up. And he did close his guard for just a second, and I was like, oh shit, don't play guard. But then he opened it back up again, and 2 or 3 seconds later he was back on his feet. So we have seen Hill be fairly easy to take down, but we haven't seen him be very easy to hold down. So and really, that's kind of the extent of what we've seen from Hill's grappling. I mean, obviously, we saw Paul Craig pull guard on him and get him in that submission. We're not going to see Jim Crute try to pull guard or anything like that. I don't think that's not really his game. And then going to Jim Crute's grappling, the guy's a pretty good grappler. I mean, he's got pretty strong wrestling. And obviously, he is a BJJ black belt. We've seen him get submissions. We've seen him get submissions on other really good ground fighters. I mean, he submitted Paul Craig, which was impressive. Paul Craig, obviously, that's the guy who broke Jamahal Hill's arm his last time out. So Paul Craig is excellent on the ground, and Jim Crute was able to submit him. We also saw Crute submit Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. However, I don't know that we can rely on Jim Crute to go to a grappling-based game plan here. If he does, do I think Jim Crute can take Jamahal Hill down? I do. I do think he can take Jamahal Hill down. Do I think he can hold him down? That I'm not so sure about. I'm not sure that Jim Crute can take Jamahal Hill down and hold him down. We've seen Hill, I mean, oftentimes, when he gets to his back, he's looking to scramble up right away. He doesn't even allow his opponent most of the time to be able to settle into any kind of top control. Hill is immediately, as soon as his back touches the ground, he's looking to square up, looking to make space, looking to get out of there. And with Jim Crute, even though he is a good grappler and a good wrestler, we also haven't often seen him use his wrestling in a way where he's taking a top position and holding it for a long time and working on the ground. He did against Paul Craig, but not until later in the fight when Craig was really tired. Otherwise, we've seen Crute do some more of the wrestling where he's locking up, clinching against the cage, grabbing a body lock, maybe getting a takedown like he did against Oleksiejczuk in the first round. He's grabbing the body lock, he's getting the takedown. Oleksiejczuk is scrambling back up, but he's still got the body lock. He trips him again. Oleksiejczuk is back up. I mean, we've seen a lot of that kind of wrestling from Crute, and we've also seen Jim Crute at least claim to be one of those fighters who, I mean, after he submitted Paul Craig, he said something like, "I'm not afraid to fight anyone anywhere." I mean, Paul Craig is one of the best grapplers in this division, and I want people to know I'm one of the best grapplers in this division. He said in his post-fight interview, he said, "I'm not afraid to grapple with grapplers. I'm not afraid to strike with strikers." I mean, I'm paraphrasing. Of course, that's not exactly what he said. But I don't know that we can rely on Jim Crute to come out with a grappling-based approach here. I think that's his best path to victory. If Jim Crute comes out wrestling-minded and just shoots immediately and is looking for this fight to play out on the ground, I think that's his best path to victory. If he can hold Jamahal Hill down, then I think Jim Crute definitely wins this fight. So if he comes out with a grappling-based approach and he's able to hold Jamahal Hill down, Jim Crute will win this fight. However, I don't know that we can trust him to have that grappling-based approach, and I also don't know that he can or will hold Jamahal Hill down. It's possible. It's possible, but I don't know how much I necessarily believe in that. The next thing we want to talk about a little bit here is X factors and other considerations. For example, their cardio. We haven't really seen cardio issues from either of these fighters, at least not that I can recall, at least in their last few matchups. We've seen them be able to continue pretty good output even late into the fight. Another consideration is injuries. They're both coming off big injuries here, as we mentioned. Jamahal Hill with that arm break or arm dislocation, whichever it was, against Paul Craig. And then Jim Crute is coming off of that leg injury, which I didn't look up and read about that. I probably should. I'm not sure. Maybe some of you can let me know in the comments if you know a little bit more about what Jim Crute's leg injury actually was, what he was dealing with there. I don't know if it was anything serious that he dealt with for a long time, but you know, that things like that can definitely change sort of how you approach a fight, you know, and they can mess with your confidence and things like that. So those are sort of X factors to consider. Another is Jim Crute has a Resident Evil tattoo. I'm fairly certain, at least from my research, I don't think Jamahal Hill has yet fought someone with a Resident Evil tattoo, so that's something we need to keep in mind. Another X factor here that I did already mention is just the game plan in general. I don't know that we can trust Jim Crute to necessarily come out with the best game plan to try to win the fight, especially when he's saying, look, I can strike with strikers, I can grapple with grapplers. I mean, look at the first round against Anthony Smith. Jim Crute's best bet to win that fight was to take Anthony Smith down, which he eventually did, but he didn't do it until he suffered that leg injury and realized he couldn't put weight on his leg anymore. He was going shot for shot with Anthony Smith, and he was losing that pretty handily. I mean, he was getting pieced up in the first round, and he wasn't looking to take Smith down. Are we going to see that same thing here? You know, if we see Jim Crute try to go shot for shot with Jamahal Hill in that first round, I don't think that's going to be a great path to victory for Jim Crute. Okay, why don't we take a look at the betting odds here and talk a little bit about bets. I'm going to go ahead and give you my hand here. I'm not ever planning to be a tout or charge for my bets or anything like that. You can feel free to tail me. You can feel free to fade me. I'm not a professional gambler. I never will be. I'm just a guy who likes MMA and likes betting on fights and likes talking about breakdowns and that sort of thing. So by making these videos and telling you what my bets are, I am certainly not urging you to tail my bets, just letting you know what they are. But after I watched the tape on this fight, I actually did hop on and make a bet on Jamahal Hill. He's sitting at about plus 155 as an underdog right now, and Jim Crute is about minus 175. I think when I pulled the trigger on Hill, he was either plus 150 or at the plus 155 he's at now. It wasn't much different, somewhere right in that range. I put 1 unit on Jamahal Hill at 150 or 155, whichever it was. And I'll admit that was a little bit of a value play. I don't know that I necessarily lean Hill here for reasons that I've already mentioned. I really think it depends on the game plan that Jim Crute comes out with. If he tries to make it a wrestling and grappling heavy game plan, I think he can win, especially if he's able to hold Hill down. But if he doesn't come out with that game plan, I think Hill has a decent chance of winning. So I'm not sure that I'm picking Hill outright, but after doing the tape study, I would call this fight pretty close to 50-50, especially with the questions that we don't know the answers to involving how each fighter will approach this fight. So considering that I'm seeing it as pretty close to 50-50, I thought there was some value on Hill at plus 155, so I went and pulled the trigger for 1 unit on Jamahal Hill. Thanks a lot for watching the breakdown, folks. If you've got any questions for me, if there's anything that I missed, go ahead and throw that stuff down in the comments. If you think I'm completely crazy, let me know. If you want to let me know all the reasons that my breakdown is incorrect, hey, that's what we're here to talk about. Let me know in the comments down below. I would love it if you'd check me out on Twitter at Erik Bets Fights. Also, I do track all of my bets on a third-party tracking website, MMA Bets. I forget what it is, MMABets.tips, I think. But I post all my info about that on my Twitter as well. So please go ahead and like and subscribe here on YouTube. I plan to do more of these breakdowns. Probably not for every fight. It's just kind of going to be the fights that I'm betting on each card and the fights that I think are most interesting to talk about. But yeah, like and subscribe and come find me on Twitter. Have a great day, y'all.